Hi there, everyone. Welcome to the first Gary Neville Podcast of 2022. Happy New Year to you. We've been blessed in our first commentary for 2022, haven't we, with Chelsea and Liverpool going hammer and tongs, but in the end only helping Manchester City.
Yeah, Happy New Year to you and Happy New Year to everyone that's listening. We saw a game, didn't we, a couple of weeks ago, Spurs v Liverpool in London, which was absolutely sensational. And this one, first half in particular, was breathtaking. You said, was it the safe standing? Was it the time of year? Was it the reaction from the Chelsea players and Chelsea crowd to the Lukaku situation this week? Whatever it was, the tempo that Chelsea set in the first part of this match meant that, Liverpool always will respond. They always go punch for punch with the opposition. They don't back down. They don't retreat. Why should they? And we've seen an absolutely brilliant game. And I keep saying it this season that the games are really wonderful to watch. And it's a high standard.
And Chelsea started at that electric pace and were 2 down in a beat, weren't they?
Yeah, and that's what Liverpool can do to you. We know, obviously, the front players of Liverpool are absolutely outstanding. But, yeah, I mean, if we want to focus on Chelsea to start with, ordinarily, I would say Chelsea are more of a controlling team, right? Position, not pressing really. Sort of, if you like, very sort of methodical in what they do. That 3-4-3 system that they play. Today, you said it with me, Jorginho not in midfield, maybe Lukaku not up front. They had more legs and energy in the team. But it's probably the highest tempo that I've ever seen from a Chelsea team. Even Chelsea teams going back down the years, they've been sort of what would be more robust and physical and strong and had different qualities than, you'd see maybe a Pochettino Tottenham or a Klopp Liverpool play. Pep Guardiola's Manchester City press, obviously without possession. But today, they were everywhere, that Chelsea team. The running that they put into the game, set by the two in midfield, Kovacic and Kante, were absolutely outstanding. The three up front.
Do you think, Gary, that Tuchel said before the game that he discussed the Lukaku matter with his senior players? He implied that those senior players were party to this decision and they had to go out and perform in a team without Lukaku.
Yeah, I mean, I think that if you were Lukaku before the game, he knows he's obviously in a little bit of bother with the club for what he said this week. But the one thing I think that when I've seen these situations over the years, it's not the first time we've seen something like this. You don't want to let your teammates down, the lads that you're getting changed with every single day. You might say, well, okay, it's a hard business. I want to play somewhere else. The manager doesn't fancy me. The owners don't like me. The crowd aren't being fair to me. But the lads that you get changed in that changing room every day ordinarily have a good relationship with. And I think he's got to walk back into that changing room. And you can't, as I said before the game, you can't unravel the truth. I think we have to applaud Romelu Lukaku in some ways for being brave enough, or whatever you would call it, to come out and speak the truth. I've called for players to be more authentic, to be more honest.
Do you think he knew the effect that that interview, which was given
I'd
not
hope
in
so.
secret, but without the club's permission?
But he's experienced, Martin. We have to imagine that he knows those words will travel back and the impact of those words and what they would have. And look, Romelu Lukaku was at my club. I said this before the game, and I didn't shed a tear at all when he left my club. He didn't say that he wanted to leave openly all the time, but you could just tell he didn't really want to be there. He wasn't committed. I didn't think he was the most professional, and I didn't think he was a Manchester United player. I knew he was an outstanding player, and I knew he would go and score a bag full of goals wherever he went, but I knew he wasn't right for the club. If I was a Chelsea fan today, if I was a Chelsea coach, Chelsea owner, I'd feel really disappointed by my player saying that, particularly when you've invested so much in him. And what I wouldn't expect off Romelu Lukaku in the next few days is sorry, I didn't mean it. I think before the game, I said the best that anyone can hope for now is more truth. Look, I said the words I said. Maybe I should have held them to myself, but they were the truth. However, I will commit to my teammates. I'm sorry that I've caused the problems that I've caused to my teammates in the build-up to a big game, because that's the thing that I think he does have to apologise for, that he's taken away from the preparation of a match. It's what Thomas Tuchel pointed to before the game. That's why he's left him out. Never a good time for it, but before you're playing sort of one of the best teams in the country on a Sunday in a massive match, the timing wasn't great. It never was going to be great, but it certainly wasn't great this time. So I think the best he can do is ask for forgiveness in the dressing room with his teammates. At that point, you ask for forgiveness in the dressing room. I think players ordinarily do forgive each other. They've all been in situations where they've made mistakes. And you'd say, right, OK, coach, he can come back in. So I think today Romelu Lukaku will be watching that game, suffering a little bit, I think, knowing that he would want to be out there, he'd want to be with his teammates. Chelsea's substitutions made them a little worse in the game, didn't they? They were brilliant, Chelsea, today. I can't say a bad word about them.
Was there a situation where Lukaku could have been disciplined by being left out? He was in the team for the midweek game, but still available on the bench. Or would there be too much noise for him or against him?
Imagine him warming up.
Yeah.
Imagine, we'd be distracted. The crowd would be distracted. The Liverpool fans. And I actually think that going back to sort of, a manager has to have control in a football club. And if a manager hasn't got control and a player can think he can do what he wants and still get picked, what message does that send to everybody else? That the player is more important than the manager, that the player is bigger than his teammates, that the player on the pitch that's going out there actually deserves to be out there more when he said that this week than somebody who sat on the bench, like a Pulisic or a not Hudson-Odoi, Havertz or a Mason Mount. Those three were brilliant today for Chelsea. They really were. I know Pulisic will have come under a bit of pressure if he hadn't scored that goal because he missed a chance early on. But I genuinely thought every single Chelsea player was outstanding today. They really were. Chelsea are a very good team under Thomas Tuchel, but that was another level of energy, another level of desire that I saw out there in that performance. To come back, they were brilliant at 2-0 down. They didn't deserve to be 2-0 down, but to come back against Liverpool from 2-0 down was a fantastic performance. And I thought up until probably the injury time, the extra time that the referee played on at the end of the game, they were outstanding in the last part of the game as well. They just didn't have that cutting edge. And I thought that not having Lukaku on the pitch, maybe off the bench, and not having him available, probably in some ways did cost them.
But would they have got the performance?
No, they wouldn't.
No,
they wouldn't, Martin.
Yeah.
And that was my issue with him at United, was that I never thought he could give Manchester United what they could get without him. And I know that he'll score more goals than those players that are out there on that pitch for Chelsea today. But what we've witnessed is a little bit like we saw with Mikel Arteta's Arsenal about 18 months ago in a game against Chelsea, when there were a few players missing and Martinelli came in, Saka came in, Smith Rowe came in. All of a sudden you looked at it and you thought, that's a different level of desire, a different level of commitment. And that has got to be the base of what a football club works off, that everybody out there really is committed. And Romelu Lukaku this week has spoken of his lack of commitment to Chelsea and his commitment for somewhere else. And they are difficult words, I suspect. Well, they are difficult words for Chelsea fans to have to actually accept because, they've committed a lot to him financially, obviously when he was a young player here as well. And it's strange, and it will have been a distraction in the team for the team before the game, for the club. But they've handled it really well today, Chelsea. Tuchel has established that he's the boss. The owners have established that they're willing to support the manager over the player, and the teammates have gone out on the pitch without him and performed absolutely brilliantly. So well done to everybody at Chelsea for coping with what's been a difficult situation this week. And Romelu Lukaku will be reintegrated, Martin. I don't believe it's a case of he leaves the club, get him out in January. I think he can be reintegrated. I saw it at Manchester United a couple of times where players made mistakes. They made their sort of desire known to leave maybe, and the manager said, no, you're not leaving. And they were reintegrated. They were sort of forgiven, if you like. And they did perform well for the club in the future. So I do think that could happen. And I do think Romelu Lukaku coming back in could be a different Romelu Lukaku, having witnessed that today.
What of Liverpool, who didn't have their boss here today, Jurgen Klopp? What have you made of the way the game went for them?
I think it was actually even a good day for Liverpool. Without Jurgen Klopp, without Alisson, Matip, Firmino, they were depleted as well in many ways. And to not have your manager...
Robertson suspended.
Robertson obviously suspended from a couple of weeks ago. So I do think for Liverpool it was a good day. They were never at the best. Just as City weren't yesterday. They've not been able to get the win by not being at the best. But they're playing against a very, very good... That was a very good Chelsea team today they were playing against. And I have to say, I think that Liverpool... I don't think Jurgen Klopp sat at home will be thinking anything other than I'm proud of my players. I got everything from them that I wanted. And his coaches. I think he'll be proud of them all. I think that to get 2-2 out of that game when actually Chelsea were the better performing team throughout that match, they were. You've always got the moments of magic from Mane, from Salah, from Jota. But as a performance, Chelsea were better. They were a better team. And I think Liverpool, to be fair, will be disappointed at giving up a 2-goal lead. But I don't think it was a reflection of the time at that time in the game being 2-0 up. Chelsea deserved a lot better than that.
They are both looking up at a winning machine, though, aren't they? Yeah, we've still got half a season to go, virtually. We know things can change, but it's the way things have panned out here today. Just that it's been the perfect weekend for Manchester City.
Yeah, when I think back to a month ago when we were talking about a three-horse race, and I'm not saying that we haven't still got that three-horse race, but it's certainly not as in the forefront of my mind as it was a month ago in your mind, probably, when you thought these three are going to go neck and neck to the end. I'm not quite thinking that sat here today. I look at Manchester City and they're a unique team. You've never seen anything like them. And to be fair, in this country, the way in which they play football, they dominate the game. Yesterday they weren't at the best, but they won. And I have to say, in this last 4 weeks, they've been outstanding. I do think that there has been a little bit of negativity in the press conferences around player welfare, COVID, fitness, too many games from the other two clubs, and I think that does get into players' minds, and I'm not quite sure where that's come from at Chelsea and Liverpool, but that has then coincided with some drop points and some performances that haven't been at the best. I think that today was a great game from both of the teams, but I think in the last month they've just suffered a little bit from what would be that feeling that they're not quite ready in some way. And I get the fact it's unique times, but these are exceptional teams and exceptional managers. And, Manchester City have had players missing, many players missing over the last 2 to 3 years, and they've had to cope with it. But City have got a strong squad. They've got a great manager. They have a unique way of playing. They demoralise you when they play football. Ordinarily, didn't yesterday against Arsenal, but they do demoralise you. And it'll be very difficult to make up that 3 games that they're in front. Very difficult, because they don't make a lot of mistakes. You've got to be neck and neck with them, and that's been proven in the last 4 or 5 years. Pep Guardiola's teams make very few mistakes, and I have to say it's a big ask for Chelsea and Liverpool to catch them.
There's no league table pressure, is there? That's what has caused some downfalls in the seasons that they haven't won the league.
Yeah, I think that Liverpool, to win the league off Manchester City, had to be a million miles an hour, 100 miles, absolutely up here. And Liverpool at this moment in time are a fantastic team. So are Chelsea. I think we've got 3 or 4 of the best teams in the world. But City are just there when it comes to consistency. They're doing it without a centre forward. So you say to yourself, how is this happening?
And they sold one who can play centre forward, Ferran Torres.
They've sold, and yet they transact in the transfer window. They get 55, 60 million for him. I know they paid some money for him as well, but they seem to do good business. They're smart. They've got the right sort of thread right through their club, and I know they've got an exceptional manager, but it's difficult to see how it's stopping there. Whilst Pep Guardiola is the manager, I think the Champions League is the big question in 2022. Obviously, what happened last year in the final was hugely disappointing for City and for their fans. But this year, I think that that's where they've got to get to. For this team now and for City, the next step has to be Champions League. That's not to say they've won the league already. They haven't. But that's where they know they have to go, and they have to go and win that trophy. And that will then take them into a different level of sort of feeling in the club, and it'll give them a history in that competition that they currently haven't got.
This podcast is concentrating on the top 3, the elite, if you like. And we were talking earlier, 11 years ago, where you had a fateful New Year's Day game, and the game that you left, you're finding it hard to reconcile with the game that you're watching here. Talk us through your thoughts on that.
Yeah, every year I wake up on New Year's Day since I finished. It's 11 years ago, and I think of that West Brom game. It's the day that I ultimately decided I was going to retire partway through the first half, because I knew this wasn't right, and I felt like I was letting my teammates down. I was letting the fans down. I was embarrassed when they were singing my name in that game, and I got subbed after, I think it was 65, 70 minutes. It could have been subbed after 15 minutes, to be honest with you, but I think he was a little bit more nice to me than he could have been. And I went to see him today, 11 years ago, and said, boss, I'm not going to play again. That's it, I'm finished. And he told me to go away to Dubai, and it wasn't announced, I don't think, till the first week in February. So people always think it's the first week in February that I actually retired. But I never trained for Manchester United or played for them again after January the 1st. So it was January the 2nd in the morning. And I said to you at half-time today, I was watching that game, and there are many players who look back and think, I could play in this era. And I'm sure that you would adapt, and physically you would. But I don't recognise the game that I see out here today. The speed of it, the technical ability, the tactical understanding is a far greater level than the game that I left 11 years ago. And it's a far greater level 11 years ago than it was 10 years, 15 years before when I made my debut. The game just moves on and it gets better. And we go through dips. I was critical on this podcast of the Premier League 5-6 years ago, and I felt as though we weren't getting the quality. But since the introduction of Klopp, Pochettino, Conte, Guardiola, Tuchel. I think the best managers in the world have come here, and I don't necessarily think we even need the best players in the world, because the best managers in the world have proven that they can take the level of the game in this country to a different level. And it's taken the English game, not just the English game, but the English national team to a different level with the work that Gareth's done as well. So I do think we're in an incredibly healthy position on the pitch in terms of what we're seeing. I think structurally off the pitch, we've got a few things to sort out, but that's not for today. But I do think the game, in terms of what we're seeing on the pitch, is in an incredibly healthy state. And this is the best level I've seen for a long, long time. The speed of the game, the quality. Actually, I saw a quote yesterday that said that the refereeing in this country is amongst the worst standing in Europe. But I actually think that the introduction of VAR into English football is a really difficult introduction. And we tried to go solo on it, didn't we, last season, do it differently than the rest. And it didn't work. Was it last season or was it the season before? I can't remember now. But we've got better. And I believe more is being let go and there's more physicality. And yeah, they still get one or two things wrong. But there is a lot less wrong with the decisions that we're seeing now than there were
Well,
three.
there was one today with the Kovacic goal where maybe in the past Rudiger, who was actually coming away from the goal, but was technically in an offside position, a wonderful goal, might have been cancelled out.
Oh, Martin, I think I'd have started the riot if the Kovacic goal had been let go today. I mean, this crowd would have been absolutely out of control. But I'm not in the position of thinking that refereeing in this country is an all-time low. I actually think it's the best and most accurate it's ever been. And that is not me with my Sky hat on. You know, when there's something to say that I feel is wrong, whether it be Super League, whether it be Premier League, whether it be COVID, whether it be something, I will say it. And I'm not here to butter up referees. I genuinely think there are more accurate decisions being made, better decisions, in more pressurised and quicker environments than I've ever seen before. There are more accurate decisions being made on the pitch in real time, and VAR is only, I think, now starting to smooth itself out and get better, to the point whereby I don't think it's ruining the game. I've seen 2 games in the last 3 weeks live. The last 2 games I've seen live have been Spurs v Liverpool and Chelsea v Liverpool, and they're amongst 2 of the best matches I've seen in 11 years at Sky as a commentator. They've been absolutely breathtaking, and that's with VAR. It's with decisions that some would say were wrong, say, for instance, the Mane elbow or the Robertson red card a few weeks ago.
Big call for Anthony Taylor 6 seconds into the game.
6 seconds in, yeah. And I think I made it clear during the game. My view on an elbow is when you see that, you see that rock, that's when it's a red card. If you just see an arm going up for the ball and the arm is moving with the flow of the jump, I don't think that's a red card. That's always been my measure of an elbow being a red card or not, or a sort of an elbow in an arm in the face. When you see that sort of boom, or you see that, that's when it's a red, because the player is quite clearly making a movement towards the player's face in an aggressive manner. If actually the player is jumping just like that, which I think Mane was doing, look, it was on the edge, there's no doubt, but I think yellow was right, and 6 seconds in makes it, I think, even more difficult for the officials. But going back to the officiating, I'm not in a position where I feel as though we're in a bad place with refereeing. I know there is a lot of criticism, a lot of scrutiny, but I think we're in a good place. And when it comes to the game itself, I say I don't feel... I was looking at that game today thinking, how would I play as a right-back in that match? You know, I know I would have coped maybe because you adapt with fitness and stuff, but that is a different level than I had to face as a player 10, 11, 12 years ago.
You were never asked to play like Trent Alexander-Arnold, were you?
Nor Reece James, nor even Azpilicueta, who's an experienced player who I used to play against. You know, Azpilicueta, what he's been asked to do now at right wing back today in Alonso, that's a big ask. To continually be challenged one-on-one. The runs in behind that are being made and at the speed that they're being made with the timing of the passing. The game is quicker, they're running harder, they're running faster. We know that because we've got the actual proof. So this idea that the game isn't quicker, the game used to be quicker, is rubbish. That's proven to be wrong. The players are better athletes than we were 10, 11 years ago. And they're doing it technically better and tactically better. The players now are technically better than the Premier League was 12 years ago, which was at high level then, and it's quicker and technically better. And I think the tactical understanding and the level of the coaches is higher than it was 12 years ago. So this is not me bullying it up, because 5, 6 years ago I thought it was a pretty depressing state, spending the billions of pounds that we were every year and not seeing the quality of football, where the Spanish and the German teams were dominating Europe every year. And I'm thinking, what are we paying for here? Where's all this money going? Now I feel like we are getting sort of what would be the reward.
Only months ago we had no crowds, and now it means a lot to me, and I think the older football watchers, pundits, commentators, fans, to have standing back in the top level grounds. And it was nice, Liverpool obviously has suffered hugely with the tragedies of the past, that the Liverpool angle was properly explored by Chelsea, and the Liverpool supporters and those fan groups were very happy for it to take place and their fans to have a part of it today. So there is a lot of goodwill for it. I know I banged on about it in the match about extra noise, which I felt as, sensitive to noise with the levels in our headphones. How do you see it as a principle, as a trial, and where are we going to go with it? Is it the next step to take what you're describing as a very, very good Premier League even further higher?
We've always been proud, haven't we, of the atmospheres and the electricity that are in the grounds in English football. And it's not for me to tell you this, but I was in Spain for 4 months, and it is a different level here in terms of atmospheres that we see in the matches. And if you speak to the players who've played in different countries, the speed of the game is different. The way in which the game is just different over here. I do think it's right that Liverpool were consulted about this game today, with obviously what has happened in the past with their history around this. However, Liverpool had one of the greatest standing areas, if you remember, in the Kop, the most famous standing areas. And I think that Liverpool fans would want the reintroduction of safe standing. I think football fans in general do. We accept in football games that when I stand up sometimes, in parts of that first half, I didn't sit down. I'm stood up because I can't sit down and watch that match because I'm excited, and you just feel like you can give more to it when you're watching a game of that ilk. And, I do think it's right. You look at sort of those little barriers that we now see in front of the seats, and actually it's safer in the sense because what we're seeing in a lot of games is that fans do stand up without those barriers sometimes, because obviously they stand up to get excited just before there's an attack or there's a big moment in the game, so they are standing up anyway. I mean, let's say here, I don't know if you want to see, the fans right in front of us here, they were stood up during the game, and you at one point, I think, and I had to stand up to see over them, and you did. And they shouldn't be prevented from standing up if we can do it safely. Obviously, safety is...
Safe is the key word. It's called safe standing.
Yeah, safety is paramount. We cannot go back to where we were in grounds 20, 30 years ago. However, what we do have now in this country are the best football stadiums, or I think the collection of best football stadiums in the world. There might be the odd stadium in Spain and the odd one in Germany that are better, but I think we have incredible stadiums. We have lots of families, young children, women, grandparents coming to the game now. We have a good sort of mix of people coming to the matches, which we didn't have 30, 40 years ago. We must make sure that safe standing does come back in a way which still keeps that atmosphere of the family coming to the game, but taps into that what would be English spirit of enjoyment, of excitement, of noise. I mean, the noise here today was incredible. I don't know whether it was the safe standing. I don't know whether it was the Lukaku situation and the fact that, they were a little bit up against it, the Chelsea players during the week, and the Chelsea crowd had the focus on them, that the star player didn't want to play for the club. But something in here at the start of this game, the game itself's big, obviously, at the time of year, but it just seemed to all come together. And it does seem to be doing that quite a bit in the last few weeks in the games that I've seen. There's a really good atmosphere in the grounds, and we have to make sure that it continues to be as affordable and accessible and, like you say, most importantly, safe for football fans.
Gary, thank you.
Thank you very much, and Happy New Year to everyone.